and welcome to Next Best Picture's official YouTube channel. We've been wanting to do this now for quite some time over at Next Best Picture. You probably have only listened to us via audio on the podcast, but for the first time ever, we're doing a video here that we thought would be probably the best jumping off point possible for launching this new avenue for us. And what better way to do it than discussing next year's Oscar contenders? So, Daniel Howat here, who's joining me, wrote a piece on the website recently of all the movies that you need to be looking out for this upcoming Oscar season. Now, granted, some of these movies are going to be coming out during the fall film festivals, some towards the end of the year, but there are some that are right around the corner coming out here in the spring and the summer. So, yes, we call it award season. Yes, we are calling this Oscar contenders to look forward to in 2023. But realistically, these are movies that you should just be excited about in general. For more information on all of this, please head on over to nextbestpicture.com. I'm really excited to be here today with you, Daniel Howat. Thank you so much for joining me to discuss this list.
Yeah, man, glad to be here on the inaugural YouTube video. Yes, and yeah, I agree. What better way to kick it off than way too early Oscars predictions and talking through contenders.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I've been wanting to do this now for quite some time. And to be honest with you, I don't know how it's going to go. I'm sure we'll fine tune as we do more videos. I don't even know necessarily what I want this to be just yet. Do I want it to be more of an interview style type of channel? Are we going to start taking the podcast and moving it over to YouTube? Who knows? We're going to figure it out as we go. But like I said, I could not think of a better way to start. So let's do that. Let's start with going down the list here through these upcoming contenders. Tell the people what we should look forward to, Howard, in 2023.
Totally. So the way the piece is kind of laid out is, really it's just a big old list of contenders. We have them in alphabetical order. And I do have some actual predictions on there that you can look at. And the thing we always say, I write this piece every year, and the thing we always say is calm down. Like these are just contenders to look forward to. Okay. Like it's more for fun and to kind of laugh at my predictions a year from now when we see what hits and what doesn't. So yeah, I mean, the first one on the list here, talking in alphabetical order, is Air. I don't know. I feel like people might be surprised at that. I feel like Ben Affleck's Air, which is, about Phil Knight and kind of the creation of the Jordans, the Air Jordans at Nike. I don't know. How have you been feeling? It's coming out in just a couple weeks here. I think it's premiering at South by Southwest this weekend.
Yes, it is actually. So we'll get some early reactions on that right away.
It's Ben Affleck directing. He did a Best Picture winner. So
he also did a movie called Live by Night that kind of derailed his streak that he was on there for a little bit. So which one is it going to be? It's so funny. I don't know a single person in Hollywood that's had more comebacks than Ben Affleck. And I don't know if this is going to be yet another one or if this is going to just be a mid movie to kind of get us through the spring and the summer. I'm leaning more towards that. I'm sure it'll be good, decent, but I'm not expecting it to be big and to last the entire year. I could be wrong about that. It might be a good enough crowd pleaser, but it doesn't seem to have the right amount of ingredients to stand out in a marketplace for that long of a duration until end of year, like something like Everything Everywhere was able to do.
I agree overall. I am excited for it. Look, I love a good dad movie, and this seems like a great dad movie. And so it feels like Amazon has a lot of confidence in it. They're giving it a really good theatrical release. So I feel confident that it's going to be very good. So I'm excited for it. I do tend to agree, though. I'm not really seeing it as a legitimate contender, but hey, you never know. You never know. But yeah, also on the list, look, somebody who hasn't won Best Picture yet, and I'm a little hesitant to think he ever will, but it's Wes Anderson. He's got Asteroid City coming out. I don't know, man. How are you feeling about Wes Anderson? He arguably came kind of close with Grand Budapest Hotel. But do you think he can actually do it? Do you think the Academy would give him Best Picture?
That is definitely the closest that he's ever come to this point, for sure. I think he could have won screenplay had Birdman not been the Best Picture winner, because normally that does end up taking usually a screenplay prize. So it was possible. Do I think, based on what I'm seeing here in terms of the star power and what the movie is about, Maybe its release date is in June. It's probably going to go to Cannes. Once again, can it stand out enough to be that front half of the year contender that then outlasts the onslaught of Oscar contenders that we're going to get throughout the fall and the winter? I think if anyone can, it is him because his films do tend to be extremely memorable from a design standpoint.
Yeah.
And also, his writing is always really meticulously detailed and very highly intelligent. So I think there's a chance here. Who would you say like you're looking out for though in terms of the cast? Because it's always a who's who of names in a Wes Anderson film, and I don't necessarily know who to have my eye on the most here. Do I look out for Bryan Cranston to come back with another
Right.
nomination? Am I looking at Tom Hanks to come back? Am I looking at Tilda Swinton? I guess really we obviously we don't know, but one thing that we do know is we do know that the star of Wes Anderson's films are typically Wes Anderson himself.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think. Nobody's ever received a nomination, an acting nomination for a Wes Anderson movie, right? I'm trying to think.
No, I no,
Yeah,
because
I don't
Gene
think anybody
Hackman
has.
didn't get in for Royal
Right.
Tenenbaums. Bill Murray did not get in for Rushmore. Ray
Yeah. So
Fiennes should have gotten in for Grand Budapest.
Ray Fiennes is arguably the biggest miss there. And yeah, I think that's the thing. Like looking at the list because it's such a massive ensemble. There's 100 names on here. It's kind of hard to say who the standout is going to be. If anybody feels like they should have a nomination for a Wes Anderson movie at this point, is Tilda Swinton. She's made for Wes Anderson. Her getting a nomination just makes so much sense. But I mean, who knows who the standouts are going to be, or who the major players in the cast are going to be. Tom Hanks too. Him with Wes Anderson is very interesting. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm a little less. I'm not the biggest Wes Anderson guy. I like his movies. I don't really love many of them, but I do kind of feel like having him come back to the Best Picture race makes a lot of sense. So I am kind of anticipating this being a decent contender for Wes Anderson, even though I'm not sure pictures in the conversation. But yeah.
sure, sure. I see next on the list is a film that a lot of people are talking about here.
Yes, a little film called Barbie. And here's the thing: before we dive into Barbie, I have to give my cred here that Greta Gerwig is, I mean, can you call somebody one of your favorite directors if they've only done two films? I don't know.
I
That's a
think
little
so.
early. If so, then she's on my list.
Mhm.
And I know that's not exactly a niche opinion, but look, if anybody can make Barbie an Oscar contender, it's Greta Gerwig. However, I'm not predicting Barbie to be like an above the line contender. Now, costume design, production design, 100%. I would be surprised actually for it to not contend in those categories. Uh, is it gonna get picture and director? I don't know, man. That even for Greta Gerwig, that seems like a little bit of a stretch. What do you think?
I know better than to doubt Greta Gerwig, but at the same time, the Academy going for a film called Barbie in Best Picture, Best Director feels very. Listen, I get it. The internet really wants this to succeed, and they're going to do their best to will it to do so. But at the end of the day, I do have my doubts. I agree with you. Production design, costume design, and I even think to a screenplay nomination for
Sure,
her
sure.
because there's one thing I definitely have confidence in with this material. It's that she's going to find a way in with this pre-existing IP, and she's going to find a way to give the story relevance and make it something meaningful. I think that writers will probably respond to that. I do not anticipate this being a flop. I do not anticipate this being a critical failure either. But I do want to caution a lot of people that are putting a lot of high expectations on this one. At the end of the day, it is a movie called Barbie. And I will happily eat my words because I adore
Yeah,
Greta Gerwig. I loved her first two films. This is just us being what's the word I'm looking for here? We're being
realistic.
cautious, realistically cautious. We'll go with
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. Like, yeah, same as you. I would be thrilled, not just like okay, but I would be thrilled to be wrong. I would love for Gerwig to have three back-to-back Best Picture nominations. I mean, come on, that's incredible, and if she deserves it. Um, but yeah, it is. It's just a little hard to believe Barbie will contend in those categories. we'll see what happens. I think I agree with you. I think it's set up to get very good box office. I believe it'll be a hit on all counts, but I'm just being cautious on the awards front. But we'll
Now,
see what
you
happens.
mentioned a second ago that is it possible for one of your favorite directors to have only directed two films? And the answer for me is the next person on your list here, and that's Ari Aster. That's my
Yeah,
guy right there. Big,
yeah.
big fan of his, been supporting his career for a while. I got to admit, though, Howard, I was shocked to see this movie on this list because if I'm being completely honest with you, if they can't go for something like I'm thinking of ending things, what makes you think that they're going to go for a 3 hour long movie that judging based on its trailer, looks to have that Kaufman like esque kind of energy to it. I don't see it
Well,
happening here.
I
And of
agree
course,
with you.
we're referring to Beau is Afraid.
Bo is afraid, correct. No, I
Hmm.
actually agree with you. I think it deserves a spot on this list as a contender to watch out for, just
Hmm.
because it is Ari Aster. At this point, he's a name. I'm so surprised at even the non-film people who know the name Ari Aster. He doesn't seem like he would be that sort of director, but he is. I know lots of like coworkers and things who aren't really into film who love Ari Aster by name. So that's why it's on this list. Because he's just built a great career for himself at this point. But if you look at my actual predictions at the end of the article, you'll notice it's not there. I don't actually think this is going to be a contender. I'm same as Barbie. I'm very excited for the film, but I'm not sure that A24 had a really good year this year. I don't think they're going to have that good of a year of getting a movie like this into Oscars, but I would love for that to be the case, especially with Joaquin Phoenix. I mean, I think it seems like he's giving a really good performance there. Um, he does have another film on this list that may be showier. Spoiler alert, that I'm also doubtful of, and that's Napoleon. But we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I think this is another one similar to Barbie that people are really going to be like pushing a lot, and like the internet really wants this to happen for Ari Aster. I do too. I would love to be wrong. I'm just not seeing it yet.
Okay, so next up we got the Bike Riders here. Jeff Nichols' first film since Loving. It's been, as you said a second ago, a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where I start to get a little bit bullish on some of these films. The Bike Riders is one of those where this early out, we don't know what the heck we're talking about. We're guessing on all these movies. We haven't seen them, right? Here's one of the guesses that I'm making, right? I think this might be Jeff Nichols' time. I think the Bike Rider sounds really cool. It's set over the course of something like a decade, with a motorcycle club in the Midwest in the '60s that evolves from a social club to a gang. It kind of sounds like an American epic, which sounds like a perfect match for Jeff Nichols' sensibilities. The
Hmm.
cast is great. Jodie Comer, Austin Butler, Tom Hardy, Michael Shannon, Mike Feist. Um, that sounds really good to me. That sounds like a
I
really
think so
great
too.
combination. So I am thinking this could be the year. Jeff Nichols, he's gotten his films have gotten exactly one nomination. That was Ruth Negga for Loving. But I think he might be able to break in and this be a much bigger contender. How are you feeling about
The big question on my mind is how many Academy voters are fans of Sons of Anarchy?
it?
Forget about Easy Rider.
Right.
We've evolved since then. It's a whole new
Yeah,
academy. How many
exactly.
watch Sons of Anarchy? Because based on the plot synopsis here, a 1960s Midwestern motorcycle club that evolved from a social club into a gang. That's the origins of Sons of Anarchy, baby, right there.
There you go.
So, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. Cast, pedigree, everything else here. If this were to premiere, heck, Cannes Film Festival, whatever the case might be, definitely on paper, this is one that I'm keeping my eye on, especially considering Jeff Nichols does feel like he has been building up to a contender like this at some point. Loving got a single Oscar nomination for Ruth Negga, so I definitely think it is possible. I wouldn't say it's like the strongest, most robust contender that we
Of
have,
course.
but definitely one of the ones that got to keep more than one eye on.
Yeah.
Next up here, man, I've been waiting for a theatrical feature follow up because Steve McQueen, I think, is one of our great artists working today. I really hope though that Blitz can release in time because
Yeah.
based on everything I'm hearing, there's a good chance it may not be ready in time for this year's Academy Awards.
I debated, and I put that in the piece that they're still filming, and it's a war picture, so post might take a while. But it's one of those that if it makes it, it's got to be on this list. Steve McQueen, as you said. Not only that, it's Saoirse Ronan, Harris Dickinson. It's set in World War II. Takes place in it's called Blitz. It takes place during the Blitz of in London, and Apple TV. Now, obviously, they have their hands full with maybe the biggest contender on this list, which is Killers of the Flower Moon. But I mean, Saoirse Ronan, it's been a few years since the nomination for her, so she's definitely overdue for a repeat.
Also factor in just historical epics here too, with Napoleon that Apple also has. I don't know, like the more I just think about it, the more I think to myself, this feels like a film for next year, and they're gonna let
Totally.
Napoleon and Killers of the Flower Moon. Because if you also throw Blitz in there too, I think it's gonna be too much. And I just think Apple is still too young in their lifespan of doing like playing this game right now of award season campaigning to handle that many high profile contenders simultaneously. Not to mention too, you got to choose which pony you're going to back in this race at a
Yeah,
certain point.
and we know who
And
that's
that
going to be.
yeah, I mean, unless if the movie comes out to negative reviews, which we'll get to that in a second here. But next up we've got challengers, which man, we're at a point where Luca Guadagnino, he is just cranking them out
Oh,
nonstop here. And I do think that even though he's made, two genre films now with Suspiria and Bones and all, Call Me by Your Name is still something that resonates with a lot of people. And it was a film that was nominated for Best Picture. So we do always have to kind of keep him at top of mind when we're discussing contenders. So I understand wholeheartedly why it's here. And judging based on, the plot synopsis too, and who's involved here with Mike Feist, Josh O'Connor, Zendaya, I definitely think that this could be more up the alley of more academy friendly fare for him.
I agree to a point. It's definitely friendlier fare. It's not as gruesome. It doesn't sound as gruesome as Bones and All by any means, but it almost sounds weirdly, Bones and All and Suspiria were way too dark for the Academy. Challengers kind of sounds too light for the Academy. It sounds like a straight up rom com. It sounds great. I'm excited for it. It's like a tennis rom com about kind of ex spouse or ex partner meets the new spouse, kind of fighting over Zendaya. Sounds great. I'm just not sure if it can break in, or I'm wondering if there's some sort of twist. I'm not talking horror or anything, but just some sort of deeper element to the movie that we're just unaware of at this point.
You never know sometimes because there are certain movies that on paper we think they sound incredibly bland and boring, and how is that going to make for an Oscar movie? And then it turns out to be The Social Network, and it's like one of the most riveting films about a subject that you never thought could be that
Totally.
exciting to begin with. So I think it all depends on the filmmaker and the way that they choose to approach the story. Are they going to approach it more from a character focused point of view and allow for those actors to be able to give really nuanced performances with a lot
You know,
of depth?
it actually sounds a lot like Silver Linings Playbook.
Could be, yeah,
rom com really, but it just had some deeper meaning to it and really caught on with the Academy, obviously. So yeah, it could be
yeah.
could be along those lines for sure.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah, the next one here is a
Ooh,
major contender, and that's The Color Purple. So obviously this is the musical. This is an adaptation of the stage musical, which was adapted from the book. I'm not sure if the stage musical was actually adapted in any way from Steven Spielberg's film, or if it was just the novel. But it
I'm
won
sure there's
since
got to be some. I'm sure there's got to be some influence there, but probably not
probably.
direct influence.
Yeah, but it won Cynthia Erivo uh, uh, get not an EGOT, but Tony, Emmy, and a Grammy. So Cynthia Erivo is not in this production, but it's Fantasia from American Idol fame, Coleman Domingo, Taraji P Henson, Daniel Brooks, her, Ciara. I mean, a huge cast. And it's directed by a sort of newcomer. I'm gonna butcher his name. I so apologize for that. Blitz Bazawule, I believe is how you say it.
Good
Um,
enough for me.
yeah, and he did a very small film called The Burial of Kojo, which I've not seen, and then
Not seen either.
he contributed to Beyonce's visual album Black is King.
That I have seen.
Which was phenomenal. So
That tells me this is going to be visually stunning,
right,
and it's got studio money behind it too, with Warner Brothers, I believe, leading
yes,
the campaign here. Christmas release date, all black cast. This is going to be gunning to be a big box office smash. Now we've
yep,
seen lately some musicals that go for the crowd pleasing representative type of angle within the Heights, and the community and everybody else has kind of shunned it, turned on it, and even though it got great critical reactions, that movie was not embraced the way that Warner Brothers also previously thought it would.
it's
So
true.
that is going to be like on my mind heading into this, but at the same time, I do think that yes, this year it was great for Asian representation with Everything Everywhere All at Once. I do think that seeing Till and the Woman King get shut out this last year, there is definitely this groundswell of we need to see like black led stories being recognized more. Um, the only other thing I'm a little nervous about with this is Steven Spielberg's The Color Purple received a record well not well the nominations
Tied
wasn't
record.
the record,
Yeah.
but 11 nominations, a record loss, losing all 11 nominations. And so that's the thing that I'm most nervous about, is what about this version is going to make the Academy say, hey, we get to do this over again, and this time we're going to recognize it.
Totally.
So it does seem like there's a lot that's working for it, and there's also some things that I'm also kind of cautious of. At the same time, I would say look out for this in picture
Yeah.
musicals if they are a hit, especially like keep in mind like something like Les Miserables releasing in December of 2012 didn't really get the best critical reception. Didn't matter. It was
Yeah.
one of those like too big to ignore contenders, and that's what this kind of feels like on paper. It feels too big to ignore, no matter what gets thrown at it.
Yeah, it's obviously going to be one of WB's big priorities. They of course have Dune Part 2, which we'll get
Which is
to.
our next film on the list
Is
here.
that the next film on the list?
It is,
So
yeah.
so those are WB's two priorities, and Dune, because of it's the sequel, and it's already gotten lots of good awards buzz. Won how many Oscars? Four.
Dude,
Uh, Here, how many did it win?
six, baby.
Six. Excuse me. So I didn't. No disrespect. Excuse me. But so that feels like a little bit of a safer contender. Um, just because of the awards history already. But I mean, I think Color Purple is more of a typical awards contender. So yeah, I'm definitely thinking both Color Purple and Dune are really going to be poised for good runs this fall.
And people should not underestimate Warner Brothers. I know we always have our eyes on people like Focus and A24 and Neon. People got to remember, Warner Brothers knows how to play this game, and they typically do tend to get contenders nominated. I mean, we just saw last year with Elvis alone. So, yeah, don't underestimate Warner Brothers. I mean, they got King Richard in there. They
Yep.
ended up getting Judas and the Black Messiah in there in the pandemic year. Like, yeah, don't mess with Warner Brothers, seriously. And like leading
Yeah.
into Dune here, I have a lot of thoughts on this because I here's where I'm at today. If this is it and there is not going to be a Dune Messiah, then I do think that Denis will probably get into director, because this is going to be more astounding than the first film in a lot of ways. The first film, there was a lot of laying the groundwork for the world and the characters. The second film has these extremely memorable set pieces from the book that I'm sure are going to dazzle audiences. I think that the introduction of Christopher Walken and Florence Pugh's characters are also going to introduce new design elements that are going to wow people, from the costuming to the production design. You got Austin Butler here too in a very
Hmm.
pivotal role. So there's a lot of stuff that I think is going to excite audiences with this film. If it is the last one and this is it for Denis, then I expect it to repeat everything it got before, with him also contending for a director slot. If they say that Dune Messiah is coming, they might decide to wait
Yeah.
and just and not put Denny in director again, and not go full tilt with rewarding the film, because they also too, like we saw with Avatar with this year, it
Yeah.
got the visual effects win, but it didn't repeat in any of the other wins that it got before. It also underperformed in terms of nominations because, when you're doing a sequel where you're revisiting a world, there is kind of that been there, done that kind of feeling.
Yep.
We even saw this happen with Lord of the Rings, where Two Towers took a well. Here's what we found. We found that Two Towers took a dip in its nomination count from
Yeah.
Fellowship of the Ring, but then it bounced back with Return of the King. So Fellowship of the Ring, Return of the King.
Yep.
Anyway, my point being, you get my point here, is that if this is it, then it's going to do well. If they say Dune Messiah is coming, the Academy might decide to just give it the bare minimum and say, let's wait.
Yeah, especially if the film is like as good as the first, but not necessarily better. Just kind of like, oh yeah, awesome, more of the same. Then I think they'll treat it as more of the same and, lower their nomination count. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I do think the Denis snub from the first film is going to help him. I think people remember that and remember how ridiculous it was that he was snubbed. It's not as ridiculous as like, or didn't cause as much outrage as, Argo, Ben Affleck missing for Argo, but close, kind of. So I do think that that's going to play in his favor moving forward.
I
So
mean, it is really embarrassing when you nominate every single element of production and not the director. I mean, it's not a good look, and
yeah, not at all.
I definitely agree with you that it's recent enough in people's minds that they're going to be wanting to make good, especially if he knocks it out of the park.
100%. That does take us to, obviously, Dune is a major contender. So the next couple films we have on here are more like we'll see how they go. The
Hmm.
next one is called Fingernails. It's from another name that I'm gonna just butcher. Christos Nikau. His last film was Apples, which was Greece's submission for international feature in 2020. Didn't get the nomination, but he also worked with Yorgos Lanthimos a bit on some previous films, and definitely this sounds like a Yorgos Lanthimos plot. It's the plot's a little vague. Jesse Buckley, Jeremy Allen White. There are a couple who kind of go to this mysterious institute that tests the presence of true love. It's about all we know about it. Jesse Buckley obviously scored the surprise nomination last year or in 2021. Jeremy Allen White, he'll, at least get an Emmy nomination, probably an Emmy win this upcoming year. So really just two major stars here. But will this be too weird? Yorgos Lanthimos, the Academy loves Yorgos Lanthimos. They've nominated at multiple of his films. So
But this is not Yorgos
right, I
Lanthimos.
know. I'm talking stylistically. This sounds
Yeah.
very much like Lobster. Like it
Did you
sounds.
see Apples?
I didn't see Apples.
Okay, so I saw Apples, so I can tell you wholeheartedly, I don't think this is going to be a thing.
Okay, well there you go.
I
Yeah,
mean, it has potential to not, go the route I think it's going to go if it does take the same route as something like Apples. But if it subverts expectations and kind of keeps that same Lanthimos feeling while also allowing Jesse Buckley and Jeremy Allen White to once again deliver really committed performances to whatever screenplay they're given, that I'm sure is going to have its own level of quirks to it and weirdness. There might be something there, but I, yeah, next.
okay, next. Next is another one I'm a little on the edge for, but it makes a little bit more sense than Fingernails. It's called Foe. It's from Garth Davis, who did Lion.
Yeah.
And he had, he's only had one film since then, which was Mary Magdalene, which didn't get good review. I never ended up seeing it. Didn't get good reviews and was kind of like buried with the Weinstein Company disillusion. But you never know what's going to happen, and the cast is kind of definitely going to attract some attention. It's a sci-fi film. It says, when a knock at it's set in the near future when a knock at their door turns the lives of a married couple struggling on their farm upside down. The kicker here is this cast: Saoirse Ronan, Paul Mescal, and Aaron Pierre. So yeah, like I said, we're overdue for a Ronan nomination here. Sci-fi, little hit or miss with the Academy,
I
not
was
really
gonna
up their
say
alley.
I'm leaning towards no on this one.
Look,
I'm trying to like be as, listen, I want to have an open mind about all these, and I will approach all
yeah,
these
yeah,
with
yeah.
an open mind, of course, always. But I will always also kind of have my mind leaning towards this being, a certain type of film
Yeah.
that Academy voters might go for, might not go for. I'm always open to being surprised. I'm always open to seeing that the winds are changing and what I thought was not going to be a contender all of a sudden is. We saw that happen this past year with Everything Everywhere All at
Yeah.
Once and Angela Bassett and Wakanda Forever for some people. There are times where genre films can surprise us. And the minute that I found out that this was a sci-fi film, I'm like, oh, Saoirse, you're gonna have to wait, girl. Like, Paul, you ain't coming back this year. Like, hold your horses, you younglings over here. And Garth Davis, Lion. I mean, he didn't even get a director nomination
Yeah.
for that film. So, how much of that was the Weinstein Company at the time? Pushing that movie. Um, I like once again, possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything is possible. If
Well,
anything, though, regardless of awards potential, I'm excited to see it.
yeah, for sure. The next one on our list, it feels like a much more likely contender, one that I certainly am thinking is going to hit big this year. And that's Alexander Payne's next film, The Holdovers.
Mhm.
I'm an Alexander Payne fan, and the Academy typically is as well. Even though downsizing, didn't go over so well. But this one sees, Harrison back up with Paul Giamatti, Divine Joey Randolph, and some newcomers. And it's set in 1970, and there's a curmudgeonly teacher. I'll have you guess who plays the curmudgeonly teacher as he supervises students at a school who couldn't travel home for the holidays. Um, that sounds like a very simple premise, which is why it's perfect for Alexander Payne. I mean, this just sounds like a kind of small scale drama, which is what he does best. Paul Giamatti, obviously, we know the pairing of those two worked really well before. And Divine Joy Randolph, she's been in a lot of things. Like she's really getting out there.
Yeah.
Um, there have been multiple instances where I'm like, wow, she is insanely talented. So yeah, I'm very excited for this one, and I think it's gonna hit big.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Alexander Payne for a couple of different reasons, but Sideways was one of my favorite films, and Paul Giamatti I thought should have been nominated for that.
Yep,
I'm very surprised that he didn't in retrospect, but it's got focus features behind it.
yep,
You know that this is going to be one of their biggest pushes of the year. And like you said, I think Divine Joy Randolph, it's very possible she could also be in the supporting actress conversation. So Payne is a Academy favorite. There's no reason yet to suggest that this won't be. However, there, from a critical reception standpoint, that can obviously impact
yep,
sometimes these Academy darlings. I mean, just look at like Sam Mendes this past year with Empire of
yeah,
Light, a contender on paper, and even when it first premiered. But then all of a sudden, you start hearing rumbling from certain critics, and that just starts to snowball down the mountain, and it just takes hold and becomes bigger and bigger. And next thing you know, your film's out of the race.
yep,
Could that happen here? It could, or it could bring him back the same way that he for quite a long stretch there. I mean, with Descendants and with Nebraska, and he just was constantly always getting his films in the conversation. So yeah, you can't count him out, but at the same time, I do wonder if we are Alexander Pained out.
maybe. Uh, well, but another filmmaker who's returning to the awards
Oh,
race, though in a much different way, is Hayao Miyazaki.
let's go.
So he said he was done, and he is no longer done. His next
Him
film
and
is
Steven
called
Soderbergh, Steven Soderbergh, they're like starting a group.
right.
Directors who quote the Al Pacino line, "Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in."
So he's back with How Do You Live? It's an adaptation of the book of the same name, but it's not a strict adaptation. It's also about how the book itself features prominently in the main character's life. Don't really know what that means. But look, there's animation is going to be a tough race, presuming this is as good as it should be coming from Miyazaki, going up against, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Really tough battle. I
Elemental.
am yeah, Elemental as well, absolutely, and
Mhm.
and a number of other contenders. I am giving the edge to How Do You Live right now, and I'm actually thinking, given that Miyazaki says no for real this time, this is his last one. Um, I- I'm thinking there's a strong possibility that this could get into Best Picture. I know some people, when we posted this article, were saying, "Oh, he's going to get into Best Director." He won't. The Academy is not ready to do a director nomination for an animated film. They're not there
No,
yet. I hope
they're
they will
not
be
there
one
yet.
day, but they're not there yet. But picture doesn't feel it is going to be an uphill battle to get there for sure. Any animated film getting into picture, it's an uphill battle. But if anybody can get back there and get there for a non-Disney film, it's Miyazaki. Like, come on.
I do think that some people might be overestimating this just a little bit too much, especially after what we saw this year of Guillermo del Toro and Pinocchio. Even up till Oscar nomination morning, a lot of us still thought that that film was going to get into other areas besides animated feature. And so, yes, on paper, could it get a score nomination? Sure. Could it get a screenplay nomination? Absolutely. Could this add up to a Best Picture nomination? Totally, it can. We've seen animated films be nominated for Best Picture before when there have been a straight 10. So the chances of that happening again, I think, are definitely present and can definitely happen again. But I am once again just being overly cautious about going all in
Yep.
and saying definitively early on, yes, just simply because this last year alone, Guillermo just being such a beloved figure, an amazing campaigner, and with the message that he was spreading this year about the importance of animation and with Netflix's backing, for them to still only be able to get, granted, an Oscar win for animated
Yeah.
feature, which
Yeah.
was fantastic, and I'm very happy for all of them. But for that film to still only get just that one nomination, How Do You Live will have to be honestly spectacular, like really,
Yeah.
truly something special. And I'm sure it will be special, but I'm talking like it has to stand out in a way that I I think the Guillermo stuff is just so top of mind that it's hard for me to see it
Yeah.
this getting into picture right now based
Totally.
on that. But I'm not completely writing it off. No, I think there is a narrative there.
Totally. Totally. And Guillermo is already putting his weight behind Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. He's already been praising that on Twitter. So it's gonna be a really interesting battle this year. And maybe Miyazaki
Mhm.
gets he already has the honorary award. Maybe they just the nomination is the nod again this year. Who knows? But definitely next is a filmmaker that again lots of people want to see get his due finally, and that's David Fincher's The Killer, another Netflix film here. The stars great cast. Michael Fassbender is the leading role. Also stars Tilda Swinton. Got Eric Messerschmidt shooting the film. Reznor and Ross. It's got all the caliber here. I love David Fincher. Easily one of my favorite directors of all time. This doesn't sound like a film the Academy is going to go for. It just doesn't. They don't like Fincher's crime films, really. I don't think this is a return to the Oscars, but I'm extremely excited for the film.
I think it could be a return to the Oscars for Fassbender.
I would love for that to be the case.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
mean,
it's
I agree with you though. Like based on the story and the type of material this is not the type of film that I imagine that voters would go for. They have not typically embraced Fincher's darker side before with films like Zodiac and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. They get nominations like actress and a couple of craft nominations, but he didn't get into director. The film didn't get into picture. So with The Killer, I'm sensing a kind of similar trajectory here. Crafts, Fassbender, we call it a day. Fincher still
yeah.
has to wait.
Yeah. Yep. I'm 100% there. I do think it's going to be a next story, a different story for our next film here, similarly titled Another Killer, Killers of the Flower Moon. We already started talking about it.
We
This
were
is going
talking
to
about this
be
last year.
we did for a long time. This is going to be Apple TV's darling this year. There's no question, of course, unless it's bad, but that would be quite shocking.
I'm sure
Martin
it'll be
Scorsese
controversial, that's for sure.
could be.
But I think Scorsese not being a stranger to controversy with
Yep.
Last Temptation of Christ and even Wolf of Wall Street had its own level of controversy. What he has been able to do with his films, even when they stir up that kind of conversation, it's exactly that. It's buzz, it's
Yeah.
conversation, and it does create this kind of can't miss quality about the film that then all of a sudden people kind of want to check it out and see, well, what's all this talk about? Why is everyone getting so amped up about this movie for good or for bad? And I think that hopefully it's going to go to Cannes this year, because one thing I could definitely foresee this film doing is having a big world premiere at Cannes. Apple holds off on it. Now they've
Yep.
got the buzz already established. You kind of go away for a little bit, maybe find a way to bring it back to one or two of the fall film festivals, like New York, for example, Scorsese being a New York guy, and then you release it in November,
Yep.
and you
Thanksgiving
do it.
release.
Yeah, you do your theatrical, and then you do your streaming, 2 weeks later, whatever it is. If you can find a way to give this film a long life, I think that'll help. But that remains to be seen ultimately. At the end of the day, though, I mean, on paper, this is everything that we look for in a
Yeah.
contender. Source material that is incredibly juicy, social relevance. It looks like it's going to have some really, really baity material for its actors. Lily Gladstone could become the like honestly, she could become the mainstay of this season in Best
Yeah.
Supporting Actress. Maybe they decide to push her lead. I don't know. Who knows what conversations we might have about that at some point. We also, don't know for sure. Oh no, actually, didn't they say who's going lead supporting between DiCaprio and
I've
Clemens?
heard that, but I've heard different things. So some
Mm,
people say Plemons is lead. I just find that a little hard to believe. So right
mhm.
now I'm thinking of Leo being lead because he's Leo and Plemons in supporting as well as Gladstone in supporting. And any other actors,
We might
if De
get all
Niro,
four. Like De Niro could be double nominated alongside whoever they decide to put in supporting, and then
yeah,
yeah, you might see four acting nominations from this, all the crafts.
yeah, De
But the
Niro's
question
there,
then becomes,
Fraser's there as well, but I think his role is pretty small.
he could be in the honeymoon period.
Yeah,
You never
he could be.
know. They might decide
Yeah,
to just put him in. We just saw Judd Hirsch get in for 7 minutes this year.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I think the big question on everybody's minds right now is this The Irishman all over again? Does it get like a ton of nominations and barely any wins or no wins at all? Because as much as Scorsese, just even the mere mention of his name drums up conversation amongst cinephiles and those who absolutely hate him. Um, I do wonder what is the sense of urgency to want to reward him again? I mean, we saw with Steven Spielberg this year that clearly there was not that feeling amongst the industry to want to give it to him a second time.
yeah,
So, is the same true with Scorsese? Once again, he's going to need to give yet another. This is why he's one of the greatest of all time. Masterpiece,
yeah.
another masterpiece, in order to do that. And I think that once again, I'm being very cautious on this episode. I'm not saying anything is a done deal, but this is one of those contenders where controversy, maybe even a few bad reviews, whatever the case might be. I just think this is one of those too big to fail contenders that we're going to be just talking about all year long.
I agree with that. I wouldn't commit this early, of course, to saying, oh, it's winning director, picture, or anything like that. But I will commit this early on to say I would just be shocked if this isn't getting a good nomination haul and going to be a contender this year for
You know
sure.
what? Let's eat our words, because we said that about Babylon last year. So
You're absolutely right. You are absolutely
yeah.
right.
Oh man.
Um, so another one coming out this year is called Lee.
Mhm.
This stars Kate Winslet as Elizabeth Lee Miller, who is a fashion model turned war correspondent in World War II. It's also got Andrea Riseborough, so another person who could be in the honeymoon period. Alexander Skarsgård, Josh O'Connor. So this definitely sounds like a grittier kind of biopic. I like the idea of war photographer. I think that's a great subject for a film. And interestingly, it's directed by Ellen Kuras, who it's her narrative directorial debut, but she's an Oscar nominated documentarian for Betrayal, and she's also a cinematographer. She shot Eternal Sunshine, for goodness sake. So,
Mhm.
really cool sounding film. Kate Winslet could certainly be in the conversation. We had Kate Blanchett almost winning her third this year. Could Kate Winslet have a well, she's only got one. But could she be in a similar like, oh, we need to reward her again? She's one of our best actresses. So yeah, it sounds really interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, just like how this past year, we should never doubt Kate. Never doubt any actress named Kate, apparently. I definitely think that it's extremely possible that at minimum, this is probably another contender for Kate Winslet. It would be really cool, though. It would be really great to see a film like this propel another female director into our consciousness whenever we're thinking about awards contenders moving forward. Like we were talking about Greta Gerwig before.
Yeah.
Anytime she makes a movie, we have our eyes on it. So it would be really cool to get another contender like that in our conscious minds whenever we're talking about this stuff. So if that can happen for Ellen Kuras, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. And the next one up here is, it's interesting. We were talking about Killers of the Flower Moon being one of the like too big to fail contenders. The next one I kind of would categorize as so big it might fail. It's Mice
Blonde vibes, maybe.
Bingo. It's Maestro. Now, don't get me wrong. I am extremely excited for this because it's Bradley Cooper starring and directing. And last time that happened, we made one of the best films of the last few years, in my opinion. A Star is Born. So I'm super excited. It's Bradley Cooper in a biopic about composer Leonard Bernstein and his marriage. And his wife is played by Carey Mulligan. Co-written by Spotlight writer Josh Singer, produced by Scorsese and Spielberg and Todd Phillips. This is Oscar bait 101. Oscar bait 101 right here. It's for Netflix as well. Could this fall into the Netflix trap of, just kind of getting a little too heady, not really a heart film, not a crowd pleaser. They do more, auteur-driven films, which are great, but they don't win a lot of Oscars typically. So I don't know. I'm very excited for this, but I'm a little cautious. But I do think Bradley Cooper, at this point, what is it? 9 nominations in. It kind of feels like he's in really good shape to win if the movie is good enough.
Yeah, I struggle to see how this is going to be an across the board movie that will be a big winner for Netflix. And I also say this too because it's coming off the heels of Tar, which was so beloved
Yeah.
and so well embraced that anything now that comes after that, I think, is going to suffer by comparison. Just think of Ammonite coming out after Portrait of a Lady on Fire and
Yeah.
countless other examples that we've seen before of this sort of thing. So, in that regard, I am skeptical about the movie overall. But man, I look at just one still of Bradley Cooper in that makeup, and I just think to myself, "There's your makeup and Best Actor Oscar winners, this upcoming year."
Yeah, really.
Uh, Everything else, I've heard that there's going to be some interesting choices made cinematography wise in this film. And I'm just very much looking forward to it. Like you said, I thought Star is Born was a knockout film. And I'm very excited to see what he's going to deliver next, even if
Did
am a little, like you, cautious on
yeah.
the film overall.
Did Maddie Libatique shoot this? I actually am not sure.
Oh, I'm pretty sure he did.
Okay.
I can tell you now. Um, the answer is pretty sure
I
he
am
did.
as you're looking that up. Look, I am I'm excited and the makeup win seems very likely, makeup and best actor just like they did this year.
He did.
He did. Well, that's
He
that
did.
there you go. Look, 2022 was one of the first years, I think, go back to 2016 and then before that 1997 when all 4 acting winners were fictional characters. The Academy loves giving Oscars to portrayals of real people. Okay. So even though they didn't do it this past year, that's an anomaly. Not that's, they typically do. So you
It's so
gotta.
strange because the internet told me that Lydia Tarr is a real person. I don't know how we screwed that up.
Exactly. You got to kind of factor in it's everything can change. So there's it's just trends, but the trends say at least one portrayal of a real person will win an Oscar this year, just
Yeah,
statistically. So maybe this is it. But
maybe.
a fictional film, not no real people, but that sounds could totally be up the Academy's alley, is Todd Haynes' next film, December. Julianne Moore plays half of a controversial married couple with a large age gap, while Natalie Portman plays an actress doing research for a film about that couple's story. I don't yet know who is playing the younger half of Julianne Moore's married couple, but look, that sounds like a great Todd Haynes film. And I just think they're ready to look. Carol, remind me, Carol got Best Picture nomination.
No,
No, it didn't. It didn't get the Best Picture
nope.
nomination, just the actresses and crafts.
And
Um,
screenplay.
Screenplay, that's right.
It should have
Uh,
gotten a Best Picture
oh,
nomination. Like
totally. That's I
it's
think that it
pretty
did. Like,
ridiculous that it didn't. Yeah.
yeah. So
I think it's unfortunate because like Todd Haynes, they just they refused to put him into director,
yeah,
and I'm like hopeful that one day, but I I would like to think that today's Academy, like
that's my
I know
thought.
Carol wasn't that long ago, but I would like to think that we're at a point where we would put Todd Haynes into that position finally.
The Academy really has changed so much, even in just the past 5 years, six
Hmm.
years. And so yeah, it's not like nothing you can bet money on. It's just kind of looking at these trends, and it does sort of feel like it could be their time to embrace Todd Haynes. And it sounds like a great film. At the very least, Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman should be sincerely considered contenders for their performances.
And for what it's worth, too, in a year of 10, Carol most likely I think would have gotten in.
Yeah, yeah,
I
it feels
do.
like
I,
first
I
look.
I do I do believe that.
Yeah.
So
Now, a film that probably a lot of people are considering a major contender that I am more skeptical on is Napoleon. I talked about it earlier. I said this in the piece. Is there a big name director more hit or miss than Ridley Scott? You got to give him the respect that he deserves. He's made some of the best films of all time. Um,
mhm.
but man, his output recently hit or miss. And so I'm just kind of a little more cautious, I loved The Last Duel a lot more than a lot of people seem
that,
to.
that would be a
Um
hit.
yeah, I consider that a hit. But then you have
I
Gucci.
was I was not a fan of House of Gucci either, so that
Exactly.
would be a miss. And I agree with you. Ridley Scott is someone who I deeply admire and I respect so much. I think his best point in time in terms of just being an awards darling and also too just firing on all cylinders was that back to back of Gladiator and Black Hawk Down. I mean, like
Yeah,
that was pretty
killer.
amazing. Um, with Napoleon, man, I could see this either being a really big deal, but then what does Apple do when they have two massive contenders on their hands? And you know, from two directors who, quite frankly, I would do everything I could to push Ridley Scott because the guy still has not won. At least you could say Marty's won at that point. But there is a part of me that thinks that, you know, maybe it's just a craft film, gets like a nomination or two, and maybe Joaquin gets through. But ah, man, I mean, you have Vanessa Kirby in it as well, but I don't know, man. I something tells me that this is probably going to be an ambitious, really spectacular movie in a lot of ways, but where Ridley Scott fails most of the time is the screenplay.
Yeah, exactly.
If he's got a good script, no, let me rephrase that. If he's got a great script, the
Yeah,
movie is going to be fantastic because he's always a technician who is flawless at crafting these giant set pieces and making you feel like you're watching a studio backed film from an auteur filmmaker who just simply knows what the hell he's doing.
yeah,
And that's exceedingly rare in today's marketplace. So, with Apple's budget behind it, this historical backdrop, Joaquin Phoenix, I mean, that's the reason to see it alone, honestly.
exactly.
It might be a mid movie, but one thing is for sure, I think we're going to get a very memorable Joaquin performance out of this. And by memorable, I'm not even saying good necessarily. I really, because I have a feeling he's going to do some interesting things in this. But that's why I'm going to use the term memorable. So, yeah, I'm with you on the skeptical side
Yeah,
of things. At the same time, the guy is he's getting up there in age and they're running out of opportunities to recognize him. He might go his entire life without ever winning one. And I could just see that being a thing. And,
yeah.
it is what it is. But it would be really great. I would like to see it. I just don't think too that this academy is interested in rewarding old white men anymore. I just don't the compelling narrative to push somebody through an award season to a win like that in this day
Well,
and age right now.
that can't be it. Is what I feel like.
Hmm.
It has to be like, no, Napoleon is the real freaking deal. It's like maybe winning Best Picture. Then sure, like yes, give it to Ridley Scott. But if
Hmm.
it's a situation with Spielberg where totally the Academy loved the movie, just not enough to give it any awards, and thus they're not going to give an award just because he's old. Maybe this is his last opportunity. Like that, yeah, that doesn't feel enough. So
No.
if Napoleon's extremely good, then maybe it's his time. Um, Now, somebody that a lot of people are tired of, though still works for me. Taika Waititi has his next film called Next Goal Wins. This has been on our list 2 years. Right, this is the third year that I've
I
had this
know.
movie on my list. So I'm tired of. I'm not putting it on next year. I'm not going to do it. I don't
No, it's
care.
definitely coming out this year. Searchlight has sent out communication. I've been in touch with them about this. This is definitely happening. I promise you, Howard.
Great, great. Finally, um, I think it's clear when you read what this film is about that this sounds like a really charming film. It's coming out in September. It doesn't sound like a real awards contender. I think it warrants a place on this list. Like it warrants keeping our eyes on because he's a previous Oscar winner, right? Um, but yeah, it's about the story of a coach played by Michael Fassbender who works to help qualify the American Samoa national team football team or soccer, who were considered the worst in the world for World Cup in 2014. So it sounds like Cool Runnings. It's the soccer Cool Runnings, and that sounds
So you basically,
charming.
so you're telling me he's made a white savior sports film?
Absolutely, he has. He absolutely has made a white savior sports film. So
The internet's
look,
gonna love this. They're
it's
gonna
gonna
like
go
the
great.
love for Taika is just gonna continue to flow all throughout the four corners of the land.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, y'all need to be watching Our Flag Means Death. If you want
Great
to kind
show.
of did you end up watching it?
Yes, I did
Very,
finally.
very good.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't think this is. Maybe I could see maybe this getting some Golden Globe comedy nominations. I could see that
Yes.
totally
Best case
happening. Yeah,
scenario, comedy nominations at Globes. It pushes Fassbender for The Killer. I struggle to see where else it goes from there, honestly. Like
I
I
agree.
saw
I
you
mean,
had it. I saw you had it listed for some prospects on there, and I was just like, dude, like I feel like the world needs a break from Taika Waititi at this
they
point
do.
in
Yeah,
time.
they do.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I don't think it's a legit awards contender, but hey, you never know. An interesting one. I believe I'm pronouncing the title right. Niad. The filmmaking team, Jimmy Chin and Elizabeth Wasserheili, for who did
Great filmmakers.
yeah, great filmmakers behind Free Solo. This is
And The
their
Rescue.
narrative. And The Rescue, of course. This is their narrative debut. So it's a sports drama about long distance swimmer Diana Nyad, played by Annette Bening. It's also got Jodie Foster, Reese Fans, and it's from Netflix. So yeah, very interesting contender. To me, it does sound like the sort of contender where it's like Annette Bening and Jodie Foster or bust. Like it kind of sounds like the two of them or nothing else. But hey, sports dramas are interesting here. So I'm kind of into this one. What do you think?
Uh yes. Yes, because at the end of the day, the recreated sequences in The Rescue, which I didn't know were, recreated at the time while watching. I
Right.
didn't know what was real and what wasn't. I thought that was riveting stuff. I thought Free Solo was also an extremely gripping documentary in a lot of ways. So I trust them as filmmakers to be able to pull off this story. I am very hopeful for Annette Bening. She's somebody that should have won by now. I would love
Hmm.
to see her win one at this point. With Netflix behind it, they're going to be pushing it hard. However, we saw this past year a movie like The Swimmers get a world premiere at TIFF. Didn't really go anywhere else after that. All of a sudden, it kind of just like faded away. I don't think this will do that because of the names attached to it. It'll probably stick around, but it does make me wonder what else does it have to offer? What is that special, unique aspect about it that's going to make it stand out amongst a crowded marketplace? And it if it doesn't have that, then it will just have to settle for being a solid movie that had buzz, and maybe it's got good reviews too. Something like She Said, maybe it
Yeah.
contends and gets nominated along the way, but then on Oscar nomination morning, it's not there. Why? I mean, there's a multitude of different reasons as to why. But at the same time, I'm very excited for them. I think they're
Yeah.
tremendous filmmakers, and I'm also really pumped to see what Annette Bening brings to this.
Absolutely. Another reliable nominee, former two-time former winner, Anthony Hopkins. He is back in a film called One Life. Now, I'm actually not familiar with this story, but there's a man named Sir Nicholas Winton, and some people dub him the British Schindler, as in Schindler's List, who helped rescue children at risk of being murdered by Nazi Germany during World War II. So yeah, it's TV director James Hawes behind this. Johnny Flynn plays the younger version of Anthony Hopkins' character. Helena Bonham Carter's in it. Jonathan Pryce. That it's all signs point to British prestige drama. To me, I'm that doesn't speak to me exactly. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a major contender. There's always some of those British prestige dramas that kind of come and go and don't make a lot of splash here in the States. This could be that, or it could be a huge hit. Like there's a world where Jonathan Pryce wins supporting actor or something like that. But right now, I'm not really feeling it, but definitely want to keep our eyes on.
Okay, so my first question is this: is there a studio attached to this?
There must be. One second.
Because if there isn't, the first thing I'm going to tell you right now is I could see this going to a film festival without a distributor, and then HBO picks it up, and all of a sudden it's an Emmy contender instead.
You're not wrong. Film Nation and BBC Films.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Film Nation is not exactly a heavy hitter in the awards race, but
No, but at the same time, uh, yeah, I'm not completely sold on this, but
yeah,
let's wait and see. On paper, it seems like it's got a lot of interesting angles going for it, but once again, it's like I don't know. There's a part of me lately that feels like I'm going to take All Quiet on the Western Front as a great example of this, where there's always a Holocaust film, there's always a
yeah,
war film, there's always a sports drama, there's always this, there's always that. You know what I mean? And I think for me at this point, and also I'm feeling this with the Academy too, they want to see something either that they haven't seen in a long time, or they want you to take something that is familiar and reimagine it in a way that feels fresh and new. Hence All Quiet.
yeah,
And some might argue with me on that, but that's okay, to each their own. Or they just want something that's totally original, like Banshees of Inisherin
yeah.
or Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I think that if you're going to present something that on paper sounds too much like Oscar bait, which is a term I think gets used a little too loosely, but this is a case where I would say, yeah, that sounds like Oscar bait to me.
Yeah.
I don't see any angle there that feels like it would be a way in to make it stand out. But then again, early days, there's a lot of stuff in these plot synopses that we are not aware of. That sometimes there's like a little interesting little twist and angle on some of these stories that do elevate it to that
Totally,
point. So we'll see.
totally.
I mean, and in a lot of ways, with our next contender here, this is one where it's like, yes, I feel like I've seen this story before. Yes, I feel like this, fits the very definition of Oscar bait, but there is a couple of narratives at play here, and it definitely has the potential to show us something that we've never seen before, which I think is going to make it a big contender this year.
Yep, and you are speaking, of course, about Oppenheimer. I want to ask you first. How are you feeling about Oppenheimer's Oscar chances? Are you considering this like a top tier contender?
I am because, like I said, I think that the marketing teasing the detonation of the bomb and not actually showing it to us, that's going to drive interest and get people to see it. Now, if when they see it, if it's not the most amazing thing that we've ever seen captured on celluloid, we're all going to be disappointed and we might hold that against the movie. But if Christopher Nolan delivers the goods here, plus with what I can tell, and I'm glad we got a trailer for this because on paper I wouldn't have said this before, it does look like the performance that we're getting here from Killian Murphy looks like it has a lot of depth, complexity, and could be a very baity part for him that could actually propel him into the actor conversation, which would be great because
Yeah.
he's been a supporting character actor. He's done great on Peaky Blinders, but he hasn't had a film role that has ever given him that opportunity to flex his acting muscles like that before. So, or at least not with this kind of a high profile, I would say.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that Christopher Nolan has given him this role. Like he could have gone
yeah,
with some Oscar winner or like a I mean Cillian Murphy's not a small name, but he could have gone with a bigger name for this part. And so I love that he went with Cillian Murphy and gave him that opportunity because you're right. I mean on Nolan's name alone, he's at least going to be in the conversation unless the movie sucks. He's going to be in the conversation
yeah.
at bare minimum.
But I think this is the kind of movie that Nolan needed to make after Tenet. And I said this
Yeah.
after Tenet
Yeah.
released. The guy has to stop doing like these big action set pieces and he needs to stop trying to like top himself with
Yeah.
these moments. And I said he needs to go back to making a movie like The Prestige or Memento, where it's focused on character and not so much these big action set pieces. Yes, we're going to get the detonation of the bomb, and maybe one can consider that action. It'll be a spectacle for sure, but it looks like that it is going to be what I was hoping for in terms of it being more character focused story. And what I'm really hoping for, what I'm most excited about, which I really hope to see come to fruition, is we need to get Emily Blunt into the Oscar conversation and get her first nomination for the love of God. So I don't
Look,
know if the role here will be able to do that, but please.
nah, look, this isn't the movie. This isn't. I mean, I'd love to be wrong. I am extremely excited for Oppenheimer. I kind of feel similar to the Barbie conversation, but in wildly different directions. This just sound. I think this is certainly going to be a tech contender, and I really, really hope Cillian Murphy can break in. I
For the
don't know.
record, it's my predicted cinematography winner a year out.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, that
Mhm.
makes so much sense.
I think Hoy Van
Um,
Hoytema is definitely going to win one day. It's
gosh,
just a
he needs
question
to
of
win.
when.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little hesitant on the Oscar chances right now just because I do wonder if it is going to be less drama, more war and action, which he's already done before. He's already been nominated
There
for
hasn't
World War
been
II.
any, I haven't seen like any war stuff in any of the trailers or teasers that we've seen so far. It looks like it's a
Yeah.
bunch of people talking in rooms mostly with there being a giant explosion at some point in the film, you know? That's it.
Totally. Yeah. So I don't know. I this easily could get nominations across the board. I'm a little hesitant right now, but could very well be wrong.
My big thing is that I've been trying to just visualize, pre-visualize what does this atomic bomb detonation look like? Because we know he likes to capture everything in camera if he can. It's not like you can say, okay, let's do take two, once you get it. Like, so how do they get it? And what is visual effects? What isn't? What does it look like? Is it over in a flash and that's it? And our brains can't even process like what we just saw. Like, I'm I'm worried that there's so much anticipation to see this big cinematic moment, and we're all gonna walk away going, "Oh, that was it." I hope
Yeah.
it's something that completely, no pun intended, blows us all away. But you know, that to me is the thing that is going to make this movie a must see huge hit, or it's going to completely derail its chances if
Yeah.
that big moment does not deliver.
100%. I'm in agreement with you. Let's move on to our next film on this list. It's a film called Our Apprenticeship. It's from Ryusuke Hamaguchi, his follow up to Drive My Car. That's why this is on the list. Look, we know almost every year we have a film not in the English language that gets a Best Director nomination, Best Picture nomination. This year we didn't have that in director. Shockingly, it's still strange that Edward
We
Berger
can we can
missed.
make the claim that Ruben Östlund is kind of that slot
Yeah,
this year.
it feels that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, and just with films not in the English language, they typically build buzz at festivals and later on in the year. So there's just not a lot that are kind of on our radar at this point. But this one's on the list. You know, Hamaguchi Drive My Car is incredible, and so this film could certainly be another contender. And what's going to be interesting, you know, this could be Japan's Oscar submission, which would make a ton of sense if they did that. I wonder if they will finally choose a Miyazaki film though for their submission. I lean towards they probably wouldn't do that, but you never know.
All I'll say about this is I don't know if this will be the film to, contend on the level that you're saying. I understand why it's here. I get why you selected it.
Yeah.
What I will just say is definitely pay attention to what plays at Cannes this year because that's where we'll see most likely the international film that will all of a sudden then continue to make noise all throughout the season. Decision to Leave could have been that movie this year, maybe,
Such
but
a
it
bummer.
didn't.
Yeah.
I know. And I also know too that All Quiet on the Western Front, like it kind of shocks me that Cannes did not select that movie to play there and they had to wait all the way until TIFF to debut it. But international cinema is where you go for Cannes, and or you go to Cannes for international cinema. In any event, bottom line is when we're looking for our international contenders, that's the place you want to start. So all eyes will be there in May.
Well,
Speaking of all eyes being somewhere,
yeah,
oh man,
a film that you have
oh
already seen that I have not
yes,
seen. So let's start with you. Past Lives,
oh
Sundance
my God.
film. Lots of people have seen this, and I have not. Tell me
It's
about it.
not
What are you
that many
thinking?
people. Don't give
I'm
yourself
left
like
out.
that much
I'm so
FOMO.
left out.
It's not that many people. Because honestly, so many people covered Sundance this year virtually and didn't know that this was going to be a thing. I had a feeling. I was like, you know what? They're being very selective about which movies are not virtual. I was like, I should try to see the ones that are not virtual and find out like what the deal is. Man, I'm so glad that I did though, because this is easily my favorite film of the year still at this point. This will most likely still be in my top 10. I don't know where it will land when all is said and done, but it is a perfect feature directorial debut from Celine Song, who I think is going to be this year Charlotte Wells. I could just honestly just see her cleaning up all of the breakthrough new director awards and going even further than that too onto the Oscars with at minimum a screenplay nomination because the writing in this movie is very reminiscent to the kind of subtle, nuanced, complex, character focused drama that didn't overstate itself, but you could just feel it working its way overview the same way that something like Drive My Car did. Only here, I do think it is maybe a bit more accessible for obvious reasons. It's not 3 hours long. It's not predominantly in a foreign language, although it does have a bit of mixture of Korean and English in it throughout. But the performances are so lived in, they're so human, so relatable. I'm telling you, like this is the real deal. This movie, the only thing that's concerning me is that it is small. It's a small
Yeah.
film, like After Sun, like The Farewell. And A24, when they've got a big movie on their hands, or they've got the film that's going to be the next Best Picture Oscar winner, like a Moonlight or Everything Everywhere All at Once, sure, they can get it into the conversation, no problem. But when they have a tiny film such as this, um, it's a hard sell for Academy voters, and it's going to be a hard sell. That's why I'm talking about it the way that I'm talking about it right now. Is if anybody's watching this and has gotten this far into the video, um, I need them to know that this movie is the real deal and it is definitely worth your time. So for everyone out there that's interested in seeing it when it gets released theatrically, run to the theater to go see it. Support this movie. Tell people about this movie. I am telling you right now, Howard, I would be shocked, honestly shocked beyond belief if this movie was not like in your top three favorite of the year when all was said
it
and done.
it
I'm not
sound it
kidding.
this sounds like my kind of movie. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
Um
it's so up your alley.
that I'm so excited for it. Which is why I'm so mad that everybody's seen it and I haven't seen it. All right. So yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm extremely excited for that. I kind of echo what you're saying that it does it sounds weird to doubt A24 when they like did so incredibly well at the 2022 Oscars, but it
But
does
like, but
sound
like,
like the film
let's
in the line of like The Farewell and Eighth Grade that like gets close to a screenplay nomination and misses. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing with A24 that I'm going to be very quick here because I know we still have a couple more films to
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
Um, they are not campaigning films the traditional way that other
yeah,
studios are campaigning. They are trying different strategies and they're trying different things. A24 did not campaign Everything Everywhere All at Once at all during the first like 9 months of the entire
yeah.
year. And what they did was they took all their campaign money and they used it to get them radio, television time, putting them on all these different talk shows. They let social media do the work for them,
Yeah, yeah,
which is
because
why
because they had to
I'm doing
film.
my part for past
Yeah,
lives right now.
yeah, they had to film that they didn't have to do anything for social media. Like
Right.
everybody had already grabbed onto it. Totally. All right, let's jump through. We are running a little long, so let's just kind of jump through these next few
Yeah.
contenders a little quicker here. So, Yorgos Lanthimos returns with Poor Things. He also has another film that I actually left off of this list just because I'm not sure that they're going to release two of his films in the same year. Poor Things is the one that should be released first. He also has another film called but like I said, I'm not sure it's coming out. So, Poor Things. It's Emma Stone, Willem Dafoe, Mark Ruffalo, Rami Youssef, Gerard Carmichael, and a lot more. It sounds really bizarre when a woman drowns herself to escape her abusive husband, and then she's like brought back to life by an eccentric scientist. All I can hope for is that Willem Dafoe plays the eccentric scientist. That's all I want in the world. And then he wins an Oscar, you know? So there you go. So yeah, this sounds, if it's not too weird, which it very well could be. But if it's not too weird, look, they went for Lanthimos before, but it was for a film that was not traditional is not the right word, but it had the trappings of a more traditional awards film with The Favorite. So we'll
I
see
think
how
what you
they.
need to look at instead is you need to look at The Lobster versus The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and you need to ask
Sure.
yourself, forget about The Favorite. This is not going to be The Favorite. You
Yep.
need to ask yourself, is this a lone screenplay contender like Lobster, or is this going to be like The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and it's going to just completely not be the Academy's cup of tea?
Yeah.
I do think there's maybe a couple more things in play, like Emma Stone, Willem Dafoe, like you said, but
Yeah.
this is not going to be, I think, a craft movie like The Favorite was or anything like
Yeah.
that. So, um, either way, one of my most anticipated films of the year. Yorgos Lanthimos has
100%.
just carved out a spot for himself now in my cinematic love of directors, and I can't wait to
And
see
you
what
know
story he
what's funny
brings.
is I was not a fan of The Lobster or Killing of a Sacred Deer. I was a fan of The Favorite. So maybe I'm more like the Academy. I'll go with the closer to traditional things than his more weird projects. So I don't know. We'll see if I'm into this one.
I like fucked
Uh
up shit, so
so interesting one coming out this year. Sofia Coppola is back, and her film is Priscilla, as in Priscilla Presley. So very interesting to come out the year after Elvis, which, shockingly still won 0 Oscars.
Maestro
But
and Tar, Priscilla and Elvis. We got these double features
yeah,
already working your way.
but
I,
obviously
I I
it's a different
I don't
angle, of
know.
course.
This is my same issue with Maestro, which is coming off the heels of the previous film. It's
Even
going to
more
suffer.
so.
Yeah, it's going to suffer by having these comparisons. Some just, some of them unjust. I will say this though, not the biggest Elvis fan over here, and I know a lot of people who feel the same way as I do. I know some people who
I'm
feel
with you.
differently,
I'm with you.
and that's okay. But I will say that those of us who did not think Elvis was all of that, I am hopeful for the prospects for this film
Yeah,
in a lot of
you
ways.
couldn't get two more different directors, I feel like.
Right.
Baz Luhrmann and Sofia Coppola. So
This might be more my kind of film than what Elvis was. And
exactly.
I understand that one is about, Priscilla, and the other one's about Elvis, and there's only a portion of the Baz Luhrmann film that was about that relationship. Um, Listen, at bare minimum here, I'm just glad we got another Sofia Coppola
Yeah.
film.
That's where I'm at. I think I'm excited for the film. I think it's probably going to be very good. I have a hard time believing that on the heels of Elvis, it's going to get legitimate awards attention. Not because of quality. Sometimes it just other things than quality are at play. That's what we talk about all the time here. And so, you have to consider that. So yeah, but another biopic that I feel like does have a lot more potential to hit is Rustin. This film was also on last year's list here, so we've been waiting for it for a little bit. It's Coleman Domingo, disappointingly snubbed this year for a live action short nomination, or excuse me, an animated short nomination. But I think his chances are a lot better. He plays Bayard Rustin, legendary figure in 20th century who organized the 1963 March on Washington, worked with Martin Luther King. He's done so much for civil rights activism. And so, yeah, I think this could be a really big biopic. It's Netflix. It's got George C. Wolfe behind it, who did Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Jeffrey Wright, Chris Rock, Audra McDonald, Divine Joy Randolph. There's a lot going on here that
Yeah.
could add up to a big contender. At the very least, I think Coleman Domingo, fresh off his Emmy win, could be in the conversation here.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. I think it's his time to finally be recognized in this sort of manner. And you couldn't have asked for a better type of role to be able to get him to that point with the Academy. And I'm hopeful. I'm extremely hopeful with this one. This is one of the Netflix titles this year that I feel actually pretty good about, all things
Yeah.
considered. And I think George C. Wolfe, what hurt him with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom was the confined space of that
Yep.
story, where here there's not going to be that problem. So as long as they can capture social issues that are going to be relevant to people to today, and that gives people something to latch on to, and Coleman Domingo knocks it out of the park, which we know he's going to do, you've got then all of a sudden a leading best actor contender performance that could then bring this to best picture, much in the same way we saw like last year with like Austin Butler with Elvis, where
Yeah.
sometimes the strength of the lead performance is enough to bring along so much more with it, and I could see that happening here.
I'm skipping over our next contender just because one is so similar to Rustin. It's a film called Shirley, starring Regina King as Shirley Chisholm,
Yeah.
America's first Black Congresswoman. She also ran for president. This could be a big one. We saw what was the miniseries Miss America, where Shirley Chisholm was a character there as well. This is a biopic as well, just like Rustin. So we don't really know much more than that, other than that it's about Shirley Chisholm. So I don't know if is it a birth to death biopic? Is it on a specific period of her life? Don't know. But what we do know is it's from Oscar winner John Ridley, who wrote 12 Years a Slave. He's directing this one. So it's Regina King, y'all. I mean, she's an awards magnet. What else can you say?
Can't doubt her.
Yeah, so this could
I
totally
mean, this is like
be
one of those cases where it's like, even if it doesn't like come along for picture or any other category, you got to pencil her in.
right.
You got to have her in your early predictions. I mean, she's just incredible in everything she
Yeah.
does, and she is an awards magnet. So I completely agree with you. But Howard, I noticed you skipped another film on the list here. What? Just I understand to pair these two together, but I hope you're not going to overlook my girl Emerald Fennell's upcoming film.
I never would. No, Saltburn. We don't have to say we don't know much more about this film, other than that it is from Emerald Fennell. It's starring Barry Keoghan, Carey Mulligan, Rosamund Pike, Richard E. Jacob Elordi. Look, this.
Richard E. Grant, you mean?
What did I say?
Richard E. Jacob.
Sorry, I'm reading too fast.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah, look, we don't know much other than that it follows an aristocratic English family. That's all we know. Doesn't matter. It's
You know what
totally
that tells me
be a
right
contender.
there? That I was going to say that tells me that this is immediately going to be a contender in a satire, sort of dark comedy style. Think of Triangle of Sadness. Think of The Favorite. Think of anything that kind of has like that mean edge to it, while also giving actors the opportunity to chew on some really nasty dialogue. Yes, 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 and yes. I was such a massive fan of Promising Young Woman. I was such a massive fan of her. I was so happy to see her get that Oscar for original screenplay. She instantly bought herself a ticket to anything that she wants to make, anything she wants to do. I am there. I am there day one, there to support.
I completely agree. Just for the counter argument, could it be a sophomore slump? Such a big first hit. It's always possible, but for now,
Look what happened with The Sun this year.
honestly, yes, that's a very good example.
We
But
call
no,
that a salt burn, ladies and gentlemen.
boo, boo. But yes, I am thinking that this is going to be a contender. It's from Amazon. Amazon's got this one. Linus Sandgren shot this, produced by Margot Robbie, just like Promising Young Woman. I'm in. Like I'm in. What more can you say? Let's see, just a couple more, 3 more here on the list. Let's go through them quick.
Okay.
Another Netflix film is Spaceman. This is one of those like bubble contenders. Like, what sort of film is this going to be? Here's what I have to say. It's Adam Sandler. Hold on. It's Adam Sandler from Chernobyl director Johan Renck. So that tells me, and with Carey Mulligan as well, and Paul Dano alongside them. So that tells me this is not, an Adam Sandler movie, right? This tells me that man wants that Oscar nomination.
Yeah.
And maybe this is it. Maybe it's not. I would have never expected Hustle to get a Screen Actors Guild nomination. And
I
you
don't know why.
know,
I kept telling you all that that was possible.
I
Like,
loved it. I loved it. Look, I loved Hustle. I think it's a great film, but it's clearly Afterglow for Uncut Gems that they're
yes.
like, okay, he's a serious, he can be a serious actor.
Mhm.
And so if he got the Screen Actors Guild nomination for a small film like Hustle, maybe a more showy film that Spaceman has the potential to be, maybe this is finally his Oscar nomination.
You know, it's so funny. I see the title Spaceman, and all I could think of is Sandman every time I read it. But I listen, I'm with you. I think a lot of people are rooting for Adam Sandler to get just get that nomination. We're not saying he has to win the damn thing,
Yeah.
but if he could just get the nomination, I think a lot of people would be really, really happy for him, especially considering that, yes, he's made some really piss poor, terrible comedies, but he's
Yeah.
also made some good comedies. And he's also
100%.
done some good dramatic work.
Yeah.
It may not be consistent, but when he's on, he's on.
Yeah.
And I think that this could all still be building. This could all still be feeding into each other with Uncut Gems, into Hustler, into Hustle. Sorry,
Hustle.
he
Yeah.
was not in
Different
Hustlers.
movie. Different movie.
Yeah, I can just imagine now, like, yeah, J-Lo, yeah. Like I could just see it. Different movie, different
Yeah. Yeah.
universe. In any event, I could see it.
Yeah, yeah. Another film that we've only got two left here, and I actually feel extremely good about this one. We don't have a title. What we're referring to it as is Untitled Bob Marley Biopic. Already, that sounds like an Oscar
That's it.
movie right away. Yeah,
That's it
you
right
don't really
there.
have to say much more, but I will say more. Ronaldo Marcus Green, who just did King Richard,
Yep.
and which scored 6 nominations, and of course, Best Actor for Will Smith.
Hmm.
And yeah, Bob Marley, a little bit of a bigger subject than from King Richard. And what makes me even more excited is it's Kingsley Ben-Adir, who, in my opinion, should have absolutely been nominated for One Night in Miami. That was one of my
Preach.
favorite performances of the year. It was such a
Excellent.
disappointment that he didn't get nominated. So yeah, I mean, and Lashana Lynch, who as well, I mean, her star is rising fast. I mean, she should have been nominated this year for The Woman King. So, but the two of them together in this film, that's pretty incredible as far as like early awards buzz goes. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. So
No, I feel pretty good about this one too.
yeah,
You've heard me say a couple of films here. I don't know, middle of the road on this. Yeah, this is one that I feel pretty confident in. Although it does make me wonder, like, how many of these biopics that Ronaldo Marcus Green is going to direct are all going to hit with the Academy. He could very easily repeat the success of King Richard here. What I will say is that even if it's not an awards film at the end of the day, like you said, Kingsley Ben-Adir just was unbelievable one night in Miami. And I, like many others, could not wait to see what he was going to do to follow that up with. And I know that
yep,
he's done other work, since then, but this here is going to be his most high profile, biggest piece of work since then. So definitely excited, definitely looking forward to it. And also, too, listen, people, I get it. It's another musical biopic. How many more of these are we going to do? And you know what? We did just see a performance finally lose this year at the
yeah.
Oscars. So maybe we can take the whole, oh, I'm so tired of this, like talk down a notch, and bring it back to a level playing field
You know
here,
what I would be saying? So after Rami Malek won Best Actor, we all said, well, now sadly, just because of trends and stuff, that kind of means Taron Egerton wouldn't win an Oscar for Rocket Man, and he wasn't
Hmm.
even nominated. And so I kind of feel like if Austin Butler had won, I'd be saying, well, there's no way Elvis wins Best Actor, and then they followed up with an Oscar for Bob Marley. Well, Elvis didn't win, so maybe it balances out. Maybe Kingsley Ben-Adir can be our winner next year. Who knows? I would love to see it. Okay, last like full on feature that I covered here was a second film from Wes Anderson coming out this year called The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. This one's for Netflix. Now it's different studio. This one's at Netflix. Asteroid City, I believe, is at Searchlight. So because they're different studios, one studio wouldn't just hold a film, right? But I kind of feel like this is going to get pushed to 2024. For that reason, I'm not really taking it seriously as a contender right now. But
Hmm.
if it does end up coming out this year, then it's definitely going to be in the conversation for crafts at the very least.
Asteroid City is Focus Features.
Focus, excuse me.
As soon as you said Searchlight, I was like, that doesn't sound right. But yeah, it is Focus, and I hear you in that two different studios. Maybe they do decide to push off. I don't think so. I think they're both going to release in the same year. I think one will stand and the other shall fall, as they say in Transformers. And with Wes Anderson here, once again, as I said earlier, he's usually the star of his films. Something about the pedigree of this one, or maybe just because it has Netflix behind it. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know which one of the two between the two.
Asteroid City.
Well, but here's the thing: Asteroid City could go to Cannes and then get released a few months after. This one could go to one of the fall film festivals and then get released later on, right afterwards. So
here's why I think it's going to get pushed. I think it releases in 2023 if Asteroid City sucks. I think if Asteroid City gets terrible reviews and they're confident about this one, then they'll say, well, he's not competing with himself anymore. Like Netflix isn't going to waste a contender. You know what I mean? Like if Asteroid City is doing well, even if it releases early, it's releasing in whatever it is, June. Then why would they compete with each other? That would kind of be a waste of one of their films. So that's why I feel like they're going to hold it.
I get it. I do get it. And plus, you don't want the guy campaigning for two separate films, two separate studios against himself necessarily. I do get it. But at the same time, I don't know, man. I wonder if Netflix just thinks, hey, we've got the campaign resources. Let's just go for it. Let's just see what happens, no matter what. We've reached the end of the list. So that's really impressive.
Yes.
You had a couple of other films here that you listed off, and I think that I understand why they were not listed with the others. Movies like Wonka, Night Bitch, The Iron Claw, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. But there is one film here that I have to ask you why it wasn't included with the others. Why did you include Ferrari?
STX Entertainment and Michael Mann.
Okay. Listen. Michael Mann should not be a detriment as far as I'm concerned.
Sorry. I said what I said.
Okay.
Yeah. I would love to be wrong. I love Adam Driver. I think Ferrari is an interesting subject for a film. So him making a biopic there is great. But yeah, I stand by my placement. We'll see if I'm wrong.
Okay, Howat. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I hope that I was going to say listeners, but I guess we got to say watchers.
Viewers, baby.
Viewers. Is that the correct term? My God.
Yeah.
This is the first time that we're doing this, so much so that I didn't even properly introduce myself at the beginning of this video and tell people who I am, who we are, what we do. We're figuring this out as we go, people. I want to just say thank you to you, Daniel Howat, for giving us this rundown here, giving us this awesome list and all these movies to look forward to in 2023, which we're all going to be covering at nextbestpicture.com throughout the year. That is our website, and we cover award season. It never ends for us. We're always looking around the corner for what will be the next Best Picture Oscar winner. And for those of you that don't know, if you haven't looked in the description box, or you don't follow us on our podcast, or you don't follow us on Twitter, I'm Matt Negley with nextbestpicture.com, and I want to thank you all for joining us for this video here today. And we will see you all, I'm going to do it, Howard, I'm going to say it, next time.